Hello, then. Welcome to a new episode of Say Again with me, Amrita Tripathi. With this episode, we're going to kick off a monthly episode where it's going to be me talking a little bit about what I've learned from our amazing guests on the show. Also, a few things that I think might be fun and interesting for viewers and listeners like yourself as we go forward. We will have themes sometimes, and I'm certainly excited about hosting an AMA. So I'd love to have you send in your questions, which I can put to our guests, which I can, of course, take myself as well when I'm the right person to answer them. To kick off, I do want to talk a little bit about what we know about Say Again as it stands today. This podcast has been doing pretty well, thanks to so many of you listening in from various cities in India and across the world. So I usually talk to change makers, thought leaders, and achievers about their success, their domain expertise, but I'm very curious to know also what goes on behind the scenes, right? All of us in life go through these ups and downs. We have to face crises, and that's kind of when we get to test our mettle. We get to see what that famed resilience is all about. We get to really see who's in our corner. I'm very curious about how we navigate those moments, how we navigate the challenges, sometimes the life crises, sometimes the life stages that we have to go through. And I'm also very curious about what our leaders that we talk to on Say Again, especially what they think about empathy as a superpower, what they think about empathy in leadership or compassion in leadership. How do they show up for each other? In fact, how do each of us show up for each other, whether it's in the workplace or societally? So what I'm going to do today is share a little bit about, I'm going to try to aim for 3 lessons from 3 of our podcast guests. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've learned from these conversations, and I'm going to invite you to share your comments and questions with me as well. Let's get straight to it. So, I kicked off the podcast with the wonderful CNBC TV 18 managing editor Shereen Bhan, someone whose orbit I was in when I was at Network 18 at the channel formerly known as CNN IBN. I was part of the launch team there. I started as a very, very green reporter and news anchor. And Shereen was already very, very much a powerhouse and, very synonymous with the brand. And she's only grown from strength to strength. What really struck me about this episode of Say Again that we did, which kicked off this entire podcast, and I hope you listen to it as well. What really struck me was what she had to say when she was kind of examining some of her own journey, charting, of course, from success to success. But what struck me is that she said she doesn't take all the awards and accolades that seriously. She said she's learned, especially after turning 40, not to let what other people think really get to her, not to really worry too much about what other people are thinking. She's definitely learned to have more confidence in her own voice, in her own self. And we talk a little bit about her amazing journey with yoga. But it really struck me, this moment where you feel, you kind of have everything going for you. And she says at the end of that interview, she said, we come full circle in that chat, where she was saying, what would the use be of all those awards and accolades if you have no one really in your inner circle, no close friends or family or loved ones to share those with? So that's one thing that really stays with me. Of course, the fact that somebody like Shereen would even have second thoughts or second guess herself as she was a younger reporter or anchor certainly did give me pause to think. There's a human in there, like for all of us, right? There's always something we can do for someone else. So anyway, sorry for embarrassing you here, but big hugs across the...
Thank you for sharing that story. Now I remember, but yeah, I forgotten about that. But we are human beings at the end of the day, and I keep telling people that just because you see us on TV, and just because we have the ability to talk to people on television, and we have a microphone, and we get on television night after night, it doesn't make us special. That doesn't make us special. What makes us special is who we are as people, what we do, and how we make other people feel. I mean, that's which is what it goes back to the first question that you asked me, Amrita. Why don't I take any of these awards and all of that seriously? Because when it's all done and dusted, the awards are a nice thing to have, but if I'm not going to have my family and my friends and people I care about, there with me celebrating my success or holding my hand through the really dark days, what's the point of the awards and the rest of it?
And I will share that, I was very, very moved to see how that incident I shared about, this moment where she was super kind to me for no reason whatsoever. I wasn't even on her team, but she saw me going through something and she essentially got it fixed or got it addressed, with no expectations of, any quid pro quo or anything that I could have possibly done for her at that time. She was just being very, very kind and very, very human. So I'd shared a little bit of that in our podcast chat with her to thank her this many years later. But I also shared that clip and it seems to have resonated with many of you. So I'm really glad that, kindness still touches a chord. I'm really glad we can see some of our amazing leaders showing up for each other with that kindness, with that compassion. And I'm really glad that I got to share that with so many of you and, of course, with Shereen herself. So maybe a couple of lessons there, just remembering to be human, to be kind, to have that kind of grace under pressure, and make no mistake, she's, top of her game because she's one of the hardest workers you will ever see. So that perseverance, that, able to withstand that kind of pressure, but still remembering to be a kind leader, and an empathetic one, really shone through for me. So that's a long lesson. I'm wondering if any of you have taken anything from that you'd like to share with us. You can definitely drop me a note on social. You can reach out to me, obviously, through any of the comments, or you can email team@healthcollective.in, and I'm sure to get eyes on that as well. I'll move to another lesson learned from another guest. And I very much enjoyed having Maria Goretti on Say Again very early in our debut episodes as well. And she's someone we've, of course, many of us have grown up watching, back from when she was a VJ. And she's now also very much on the culinary scene. She's a Michelin-trained chef. She has this wonderful cookbook, From My Kitchen to Yours, which I have as well. And I've seen her now on the Lit Fest circuit because not only does she have the cookbook, but she's also a poet. I really love chatting with her because she's just as warm and generous and kind as you would expect her to be. And she was really someone who I think was super authentic in that chat. The one thing I took from that chat that has really stayed with me, is when I was asking her about the good, bad, and ugly about aging. And she said essentially that she's always been really comfortable in her own skin. She's always been really comfortable knowing who she was. And I thought that was really heartening because, what more could you ask for in life, especially in a career that's so much of it is a public, performative kind of role. But the more I sat with that and thought about that, I realized that's something that each of us could learn from as well. The good, bad, the ugly. What's your relationship like with the whole process?
If there's one thing that I have always been comfortable with, it is with me, however I am. I am very comfortable with me. Yes, I've gone through phases where I probably didn't look my best. I probably was not feeling good internally. But I feel that at every age in your life, you cannot look the same. Your insides change, your head changes, your face changes, your body changes, and you can't fight that process. Okay, it's an impossible battle, and you should not get into it because you are going to lose. Why is it called the aging process? Because we as human beings age. That is the natural cycle of life. It's like probably for trees, it's different. They let go of their leaves and they start from afresh. But still, after a few years, a tree stops giving fruit. So they may go through the process of still losing their leaves, still getting fresh leaves, but they don't anymore give fruit.
I think this knack of being comfortable in your own skin, this knack of knowing exactly who you are, can stand you in such good stead in whatever walk of life. We tend to be easily swayed otherwise. People can prey on our insecurities. And I'm talking here not just about people, but brands and advertisers and, entire industries. So that was really heartening to hear from her and actually learn from her as she shared very humanely and empathetically, again, as I thought. That chat was something I really, really did enjoy. So definitely let me know if you had a chance to check that one out. And I'll wind down this monologue of an episode by saying I also enjoyed very much talking more recently to the chief of Yuva, Nikhil Taneja, who has been, of course, a co-founder and chief of Yuva. He's also someone who hosts that super popular show called Be a Man Yaar, where he recently spoke to Imran Khan and Bhuvan Bam. And, I talked to him about some of the impact he's been having and what those kind of chats and conversations really leave him with, because he's someone who clearly is able to create space and hold space for people to be extremely vulnerable, including some of these top celebrities, where they share very movingly what it's like to have, mental health challenges or setbacks, including due to addiction in the family. But what really stayed with me is not that, not just all of that empathy on display. And I loved asking him how he shows up as an empathetic leader without actually being walked all over. And that was also a learning curve of a conversation. It's something that I've also had to deal with, and learn how to be, super professional, but also have empathy be a part of that equation, not over-index on it, potentially leading to more complicated situations. But when I asked him, actually the first question I asked him off the bat was, what does he think his most impactful work has been? And I thought that would be a difficult question. And he was like, it's the easiest question to answer because it's been teaching for him.
For me, it's been teaching. That's always been my answer ever since I became a teacher. I was a professor of news reporting at Jai Hind in Mumbai for about 7 years. I taught 7 batches. And teaching changed my life because I was one of those teachers, I was one of those young teachers who actually went into teaching thinking that I am going to, if you see behind me, there is a Robin Williams poster and his quote from Dead Poets Society. So I'm a huge fan of that film. And I also had these notions, and I would say magnanimous notions of going and changing the lives of my students. But it's actually the reverse that happened, because I went there with this understanding that I am going to talk a lot and I get impressed. And then when I started listening, actually is when everything changed for me. I had wanted to just teach them, but I ended up learning a lot.
And he's been someone who loves talking to young people. He's taught students for a long time, and he talked about this beautiful kindness project that he kicked off with his students, and that really says a lot about the filter with which he looks at life. And I think it would behoove us, more of us, to think through how we can actually be there for others. What does it mean to front and center kindness? What does it mean to help curate some of these spaces for each other, especially younger people, when they may not have access to these kind of spaces just to be? And it's not just about talking down at, and it's not just about talking. It's actually often it's about listening as well, even when you don't have all the solutions at hand. So that was a wonderful conversation as well. So those 3 episodes, 3 guests, huge shout out and thanks to you, Shereen, Maria, and Nikhil. And a huge thanks to all of you who've been watching or listening. I'm going to be back, of course, next week with another episode of Say Again with another fabulous guest. And I'll be back next month, hopefully taking some of your questions and comments on here as well. Thanks so much for watching and listening.